Before starting this course on career counseling, it is extremely important to understand why you should take your career choice seriously. In this video, we will help you understand the importance of making the right career choice for yourself. So, why is your career choice so important? It is important because it determines a lot of things in your life, including number 1, quality of life. Your career choice plays a huge role in deciding where you live, how flexible your life is, and the kinds of things you are able to do in your free time. Number 2, identity. Ask any elder person about their career and they will tell you about it as a part of their identity. They'll say something like, I am a journalist, instead of, I report news. Notice how everybody asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And not, what do you want to do when you grow up? This shows that your career choice shapes your identity. Number 3, impact. Every human life touches thousands of other lives in so many different ways. If you select any 60-year-old person who is about to retire, take a time machine, find him as an infant, throw that infant into trash, and then come back to the present day, you'll find that a countless number of things around you have changed. So whatever career you choose, the world will be affected by it. Anything that determines your quality of life, your identity, and the impact that you make should be taken very seriously. And that includes your career choice also. So we hope that this short video could help you understand the importance of making the right career choice. Having done that, we will now move forward to start our career counseling course. We are pretty excited and we hope you are too. So, let's begin. See you.
We're live.
Good evening, everyone. सबको स्वागत है. Welcome to day 87 of Pro Bono's live podcast. सारे audience member को स्वागत है. Welcome. And of course, Aditya, Mr. Sen, and Vinayak running the stream. Welcome to you as well. और हमारे जो guest है आज के, I think this is a very relevant topic in today's day and age because I think हर student इस process से जाता है and every student is, I won't say a victim, but he is definitely a part of the process of the system. And I think it's a very important topic. So firstly, I want to welcome Mr. Randhir Mishra, who is a co-founder of Metacog Innovations. Sir, thank you for taking the time to speak with us and welcome to our podcast.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. Sabko mera namaskar and thank you so much for having me here. I think you have opened it very well by saying we are both the victim as well as the recipients of the value of the entrance exam, and it is also the season of entrance exam, which was disrupted because of the COVID. So I was just wondering when COVID will make appearance in our talk, but I think I kind of triggered that. But thank you so much.
Right. So मैं Randhir sir को introduce कर देता हूँ in full. Randhir Mishra is an incorrigible disruptor and a thinking coach. He's a co-founder of Metacog Innovation, as I said, an AI startup looking to make the process of competitive entrance exams more rewarding for aspirants. He likes to think himself as a digital evangelist with a focus on creative thinking, holistic transformation, and exponential growth that it should trigger. He is involved with some of the leading institutes in India, Europe, South Africa, and USA as a consultant, advisor, faculty, and thought leader. He is a visiting faculty at IIMs and advises educational institutions on sustained profitability and growth. He advises startups in the tech and conventional space on early growth strategy and value creation. He has founded multiple enterprises himself, spanning digital platforms, hospitality, manufacturing, social impact, and professional services. So I think we have a man who's kind of put a step into everything. So Randhir sir, thank you so much for coming again. और मेरे introduction के अलावा, if you can introduce yourself in your own words and address our audience, please.
So, संक्षिप्त में, in short, my background is as mixed in terms of my education as well as in terms of my experiences. At the base, I basically, I would say, studied or went through college to be a faculty. So I did my doctoral program at IIM Bangalore. That was the last degree that I had acquired. And before that, I did a master's in economics, which was also an international degree that I had. And I also have a engineering degree in mechanical, which is from the Manipal. Besides that, I have actually dabbled, like you said, in multiple things, which is job. I was with an IT startup. I was with an IT major, actually, Satyam. I was with a huge manufacturing company. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Your video froze in between, but we could hear you.
Okay,
I think there's a lot of feedback from the mic as well.
Is it?
Yeah, but I think it's better now. It's clear now. Yeah.
Okay, because suddenly, means I think this is going to be a testing time. I just tried to adjust the camera a bit and the whole thing went off. I won't touch anything again now. Sorry. So I was saying that, I have a PhD and I have a master's in economics and I also have a engineering background. So that is my education background. In terms of work, I have worked with an IT major. I have worked with one of the largest projects company, that is Larsen & Toubro. I have dabbled with companies like Manipal Education, HCL, both of them from learning perspectives. And I have handled a lot of consulting assignments, which spans Fortune 500 companies, some of the very well-known universities and colleges, family houses. So I think if I look back, I would say that 50 years has given me a lot of experiences, if nothing else.
Right, great. Thank you so much, sir. And of course, the topic that, of course, Metacock Innovations, the focus is on is competitive exams, or specifically using AI to make the process of preparation for competitive exams more rewarding and easier. I think that's a very important topic in this day and age, because we have so many JEE, NEET, and then we have n number of competitive exams for each and every field. And I think it's usually, to say the very least, challenging. And I think the kids actually need some kind of method to make it easier for them. Bit more, as you say, more rewarding. So I think, could you talk a bit more about how Metacock Innovation works and how actually you help students?
See, the key factor that one needs to keep in mind, and what Metacock actually has in philosophy, is that for us, AI is not artificial intelligence, but it is augmenting intelligence. So you need to keep in mind that the intelligence that we as humans possess is the center for anything that happens. If it doesn't enhance, augments, makes the process of our intelligence stronger, then we will obviously not either adopt it, or certainly it won't be beneficial for us. So we basically use the idea of artificial intelligence to see how we can augment the process of preparation of an exam to make it both in terms of rewarding in both terms. One, in terms of your purpose, which is that you want to get into a college that entrance exam is the gate for, or use entrance exam as a basis for evaluating and understanding your own preparation in the context of everybody else who is your peer or who is competing for the same position as such. So we use the idea of augmented intelligence by way of trying to map the schemas that are available in the learning, the whole body of knowledge that one needs to acquire with the schema that exists within us. One of the key things for us to learn, and I love this paradox. It is called the learning paradox. And the learning paradox says that you can't learn anything that you don't know. It's a very hard-hitting paradox to start with, but you must realize that we basically can only add to what we already know. If I were to suddenly start talking Hungarian today, now, it would be very difficult for you to make any sense unless I give you some visual cues into saying that "hoz was" and I do like this, you will understand, oh, I am asking something about how are you or something like that. So it's always that you come from the familiarity. So we use artificial intelligence and machine learning to understand the knowledge maps of individual and then help them go through the process of learning in a more scientific and structured manner.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. And I hope a lot of students reach out to you, connect with Metacock Innovations, and avail your process, avail your offers, and I don't know, make the most of every opportunity that you have. And with that,
Thanks
yes,
for
sir.
the wishes. I certainly hope so too. I think it is a win-win situation because right now we are only offering our solutions for free. So it is certainly going to be of value to them to come and explore what Metacock can do for them.
देख लो भाई, free. I mean, Indians को free से better की चीज क्या पसंद है? There you go. Of course, I want to hand it over to Aditya, who himself has, some experience, more than me at least, in competitive exams. He's been in the industry, career counseling, teaching kids how to prepare and how to get ready for different competitive exams. मैंने अभी तक एक ही exam दिया है, which I didn't prepare for, zero preparation, लेकिन I passed, little show off. But then I think Aditya has a better experience in that field, so I'll hand it over to Aditya. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Saman, and thank you so much, Ranveer sir, for being here with us. So today, I think that's a very relevant topic because generally what we tend to see competitive exams as, and as Saman started the statement, we are victims and part of the system. So you can perceive it as anything. But yeah, ultimately, to get into a good college, you have to crack a good competitive examination with a good rank, and obviously, if you get into a good college, you have more opportunities than a not so good college, right? So, Randeep sir, just to start off things with, how best to prepare for competitive exams? So there are many competitive exams in India, right? And what is the fundamental principle behind preparing for competitive examinations according to you? Whether it be an SPI PO, whether it be JEE Main, whether it be NEET, what is the fundamental principle to prepare for all of them?
Great. I think that's a perfect place to start. So let me kind of start by giving you a very simple statistics. Average Indian spends about 4.5 years of his life or her life preparing for an entrance exam. Now, that sounds like a huge one. Even if we be very generous and we say that we will live to be 90, that is 5% of your life gone to competitive exams, right? And of course, you could be doing it full time, you could be doing it partially, but you are still kind of taking the anxiety of an entrance exam for this long. So I think that, the basic mindset that is required for you to actually crack a competitive exam is to look at a competitive exam as an entry into a stadium where you need to perform to basically get the medals, as against the common notion that an entrance exam is an entry into the Garden of Eden, which means that once you are into that garden, you basically have you are spoiled for choices to pick this fruit or that fruit, and then whether you want to bite into that fruit or not, right? So the point is that entrance exams are more about entry into a stadium, and there you need to perform. So entrance exams are designed to actually find the people who will enjoy the experience of performing in that stadium, right? If you are just the spectator who wants to look at the performance, the stadium as a participant, you can be just an audience, and there is benefit to that as well in that manner. So the first thing that I always say is that please look at what you are getting into in the larger context, rather than seeing competitive exam as an exam that you need to basically crack and that is going to open some magic doors for you. Because having been through a few competitive exams myself, and including the CAT, which is supposed to be one of the most difficult one in the in the world by some standards, I feel that I have seen a lot of people trying to take the competitive exam as just an exam, or feel that they basically need to maximize the number of questions that they know and don't look at the back end of the fundamentals that they need to know. So you should be able to answer the exam questions, not because you know the answers to the question, but because you know those concepts and you know why that question has to be answered in a particular way rather than just the how of the question. So that is the reward part. So your reward is not just an entrance into that college. What I say is a test of what you already know. How do you compare with your peers? How do you apply what you know? And then getting it ahead from there.
I think that's great advice because in most of the exams, people think that solving the most number of questions will get them through. And you have to do it in a very methodical manner, and that's where I think competitive exams are very different from your board exams. I'll give an incident here. So there was this examination called West Bengal Joint Entrance Exam, which used to happen. It still happens, but in this current ecosystem, it does not happen for the college which I got into. But yeah, it used to happen for all the colleges of the state government in West Bengal. And that exam had completely different rules from the JEE main, which was there for the first year during our batch.
Yes.
I had not read the rules. I just gone in with an empty mind. I did not even know how the exam is going to happen. It was a maths exam. I had prepared decently well for it. I solved the first question, easy one. Second question, easy. Like this, I solved the first 20 questions in a row. And it is very rare in a competitive examination that you'll get all the 20 questions in a row right. But then I saw the time 20 minutes left out of a 1.5 hour exam. Then I saw the other questions. Then I saw the rules. So the rules were that the first about 30 to 40 or 50 questions I did not remember, but the first few questions have a +1 -1/3 marking. So if you get it right, +1. If you get it wrong, -1/3. And if you don't answer it, then 0. There can be more than one options which are correct. So there can be 2 or 3 options which are correct, which have their marking as +2 and 0. So even if you get it wrong, there's no negative marking. And then there were a few bonus questions which had only one option correct, but still it was awarding you +2 and there was no negative marking there. And that's when I understood that the exam setter has fooled me completely. They have given the easiest questions at the starting so that I can get a false confidence boost ki हाँ मैं तो top कर रहा हूँ इस exam को. And so this happened with me in one of the exams. So I think strategy is very important. And with this, I want to step into the next question, which is again a story. So I did not do very well in JEE Main according to what I had expected. And I was really sad about it. And I was so sad that I did not want to accept that getting into any college apart from IIT Delhi and pursuing the department computer science engineering, which at that time was my dream, would be worth it. Now, this happens to many students across India. In Kota, this happens. This happens all across India. Students consume themselves with competitive examinations so much that it almost feels like this validates their life. कि अगर ये competitive exam मैंने clear कर लिया तभी मेरी life worth it है. Otherwise, I'm useless. टाइम पे बहुत दुखी था मैं. So Randeep sir, my next question to you is, if I'm not able to clear that exam, or if a student watching this is not able to clear an exam which he or she attempts, is it the end of life या फिर और भी कुछ बचा है life में?
It's a very important and I think a very useful question to try and answer. Though it is a very personal choice in terms of what you aspire for at what time. But I certainly have seen equal number of people who have competed in some really great competitive exam, any exam, and they basically have still lived their life decently well. Means I myself started as a student of a engineering college where you basically get admission on the basis of paying the higher fee as well as having certain academic records. right? That is Manipal Institute of Technology. So it's not really the end of road or end of life as such. Means I say that, getting into a competitive exam or getting into a college which is determined by a competitive exam is an entry into a club, right? It is very clearly a club which basically has its own set of benefits. अब अगर आप देखिए तो एक क्लब में आप जाइए, ये बोल के जाइए कि नहीं वहाँ का खाना अच्छा मिलता है, तो आप क्लब का पूरा फायदा नहीं उठा पा रहे हैं. You are only looking at one part of the offers of the club. Because if you look at any of the club, one of the key thing that it offers is network, right? The kind of people, other people who are a part of the members of that club, and therefore how you can network with them, how you can collaborate with them to do that. तो जब मैं IIM में गया तो मुझे वही दिखा कि यहाँ पे जितने लोग हैं, ये लोग सब बहुत सिंसियर और बहुत डेडिकेटेड हैं अपने लाइफ के लिए, अकम्प्लिशमेंट के लिए. दे वुड डू समथिंग रियली वर्थवाइल विद देयर लाइफ, एंड दैट इज व्हाट drove them, or that is what made them really compete in that exam and come into that particular position. Now, the other thing that you also need to understand is as you go higher into the rung, so for instance, the postgraduate entrance exam is much less of a knowledge test as it is about your fitment to a particular place. So there are times when you basically don't compete in an exam because they felt that you are not going to fit in that kind of a place. And there are enough and more examples of people who make into through a particular exam, be it an IAS or be it a CAT or be it any other specialized exam, and they feel that their life is ruined. They basically never wanted to do that because that test is supposed to select the people who will enjoy that life, who will love to be in that stadium and perform. अगर आपको जबरदस्ती धक्का मार के मैंने स्टेडियम में डाल दिया and you are not the kind who enjoys that kind of a experience, then it is not really going to help you. So it is certainly not the end of the road, and certainly you will get more than single attempt. So my thought or my distillation of what my experience is that take the opportunity that comes to you. Means one thing is for sure, that time is in your side now. You guys are probably going to live to be 100 plus because science is making that kind of a progress. You don't have any race कि हमारे टाइम में हमारे पिताजी बोलते थे देखो तुम 57-58 साल के उम्र में तुम रिटायर कर जाओगे और जितने साल तुम इधर उधर कर रहे हो वो तुम्हारे पेड लाइफ में से, अर्निंग लाइफ में से कम हो जाएंगे, right? Means to his dismay, God rest his soul, but I basically have not spent a single year in a, no, actually I was an employee of IIM Bangalore for a while, तो मैंने करीब 1.5 साल गवर्नमेंट एम्प्लॉय के हिसाब से किया था जहां पे कि वो रिटायरमेंट रूल फिर भी किक इन होता था, पर I mean you don't have such time pressure, so you can take a year or so, but please make sure that you utilize that time for overall development of yourself rather than just trying to game an entrance exam. So it is certainly not the end of the road if you don't compete in an entrance exam, but एक दिन जब आपको ये समझ में आएगा कि मेरे जिंदगी का लक्ष्य ये है, जैसे हमारे ऋतिक रोशन को वो मूवी में लक्ष्य में कि जिस दिन आपको अपना लक्ष्य समझ में आएगा, आपको सब क्लियर हो जाएगा कि आपको क्या करना है, and then you might feel that yes, this entrance exam is something that I need to do and it is something that I could do well and it will give me a career or a life that I will enjoy.
Well, Randir sir, that is, I don't know if it's coincidence that this keeps happening. I was watching the Lakshya movie yesterday for the first time.
No, I think it's a very good movie for any youth to watch because it talks about a lot of these confusion that youth goes through. So, means, of course, there are glamour and other things associated with the thing. But as a youth who is learning, I think it is important to see any of these inputs and reflect and understand what value it can add to their life rather than just, as another fiction that they have experienced.
Right. It's a great coincidence. And I think what Randir sir said really reflects well that it is not the end of the road. You have more attempts and more attempts at all the different kinds of entrance exams in life. So And none of us here are, I think, IITians. So that's no, and we are still talking to you. We are happy. More importantly, right? So it's not very necessary for everyone to get into an IIT or an IIM. So with Randhir sir also, as he said, that he uh, entered Manipal during his engineering days, but then in CAT he cracked IIM Bangalore. So you have multiple attempts at it, and it's very important to stay focused and learn something from the experience, first of all, for your life, and secondly, overall development, which Randhir sir talked about. That is much more important than just the entrance exam. But yes, the entrance exam definitely teaches a lot if you want to draw lessons from it, because it's almost like a game which teaches you to work hard and set the right strategy. So work hard in the right direction. So like I did, like this WBJE experience, why I described this, because my strategy was not right. It was not that I did not know stuff. I could have scored a much better rank had I read the rules before starting just attempting the question. So the strategy is also important. And obviously knowing stuff is also important. At least I could solve those 20 questions because I'd read something. So I think it's almost like a game which teaches you to work hard, be regular, be disciplined to prepare for any entrance exam. I'm pretty sure you have to give about 3 to even sometimes 8 to 10 hours a day. So this teaches you to be very disciplined, very regular in life, which accompanies you. These life skills accompany you alongside. So last question for Randhi sir would be from my end. Uh, Sir, there are many careers where an entrance exam. So let's say in cricket, there's not a entrance exam per se, but then there are careers where an entrance exam is a must, like design, like engineering, like hotel management. Um, but still, the people who choose offbeat careers, they also generally choose a degree alongside. So, have you seen people who have succeeded without acing an entrance exam?
Yes, I certainly have seen people who have succeeded without an entrance exam. And, your example of, let's say, cricket or any of the other career that one chooses, means wherever there is competition, there is one thing which is critical, and that is you have to demonstrate in some way your capability, your sincerity, and your some sort of a track record of accomplishment in the past. So even for the cricket, the entrance exam is possibly more difficult than just sitting in a closed room for 2 hours or 3 hours and trying to answer some 100 questions right. I mean, their entrance exam happens every morning when they have to wake up at 4 and practice. There is a video of Navjot Sidhu, which talks about, means he's a great orator. It's there are a lot of people have some negative connotations about it, but I always say that, hey, listen, remember the message, forget the author. It is perfectly fine. Means and that includes me. It's okay if you don't remember my name, but if one point that I made sense to you and made an impact in your life, I feel my time is good. So he talks about this, his obsession of hitting 125 sixes every day when he was practicing, when he was dropped from the Indian team after, one stint with the national team. And he would say that his hand would bleed in the night and he basically didn't stop. And he did that for years and years together. So what I see is that for success, what is important is to get that kind of a passion, get that kind of a clarity. Entrance exam is a good way because it is a closed and a structured kind of a thing into saying, I know that this is what I have to achieve and I will basically use this to demonstrate my ability to do that, right? But other parts where you are able to do that. So if you want to become a photographer, somebody will say that, hey, bring your portfolio and show me what kind of photographs have you clicked in the past, right? If you want to become a fashion designer, it would be the same. Bring your portfolio in that sort of a manner. If you want to become a commentator or an orator, they will say, hey, send me some recording of your voice and your style of speaking. So you have to make sure that you have something tangible, because most of the things that one needs to say is known to everyone. Like, for instance, if I am applying for the CEO job of Infosys, I know perfectly what needs to be said to become the CEO of Infosys. But they will say, hey, listen, Randhir, let me see your past experience. Let me see your portfolio. Let me see you taking a 100 billion company to a 1 trillion company sort of a track record. And that is where I'll be like, okay, I will come back to you shortly on that. So you need to show that kind of a demonstration. You need to show that kind of a thing. So entrance exam to me is a simpler way of doing that, but only if that is something that excites you, right? And so it's not, like I said, that your success is going to be determined by what you do after you get into a college, right? I can tell you about my experiences of interacting with people from the second, third, fourth tier engineering college and no-name colleges. And I have seen that it is basically when you realize, when you are awakened, when you are aware of what you can do, is when success comes to you.
I think that's a great answer, and I have nothing to add to it, because I think then, yeah, it will just spoil the amazing movement that Ranveer sir has made. So with this, I think I'll transfer to Mr. Singh.
Thank you, Aditya. Good evening, everyone. Namaskar. Welcome today to the evening show. And today we have an amazing person with us. And I loved your last comment, which is, it's that moment of awakening that a person realizes that he or she can do something different and make an impact. And that's where success is started. And I think that's a brilliant observation that you made. So would you like to expand it on that a little bit more?
Yeah, certainly. See, one of the things that I have worked through my life is trying to make people understand what kind of opportunities are around and how they basically can make good in those kind of opportunity. And I have seen that, people need to have that switch flipped in them into saying, hey, I think I am capable. Hey, I think I have the energy, I have the knowledge, intellect, whatever. I just need to put those hard hours. Means I can tell you one more of my observation. For the people who have achieved more than average successes, I have also seen them spending at least 5 to 10 years of their life living 16, 18 hours a day, doing something exceptional. So you need to basically, means if you really want to get ahead of the crowd, you need to run faster than everybody else, right? Or you need to run longer than everybody else. So the choice is basically yours. If you are basically, fortunate enough that you have the ability to run faster, you possibly are Usain Bolt, and you basically will look back before the end line to say, where are you guys? Hey, come on, join me. Or if you are the one who basically is a marathon runner, you will need to keep running. Means I know of my friends who run ultra marathon, and they say that if you don't complete the required distance in the time, you run for longer time. So, you need to realize that particular thing. And, other thing that is important is that, and that's also a part of the growing up, that please remember that this awakening is about knowing that you are both the cause and the effect of your action. In the sense that when you're growing up, it is very easy to kind of say, hey, listen, that person did that, and therefore I did not get what I was looking for. My success, more than success, the failure is actually defined by somebody else. I tend to blame somebody else. I move my locus of control from within to outside, that it is the other outside external factors which is making me lose on the opportunities which otherwise I would have done well. I came second because the guy who came first basically did something hanky-panky, which is not so the thing. The awakening is about that, hey, listen, I am responsible. I can only change the things that is in my control. So that is the part which is very critical to understand, especially at this age, when we talk about adolescents, when we talk about young adults, when we talk about youth, that I am capable. I can actually achieve what I set out to myself. And once I start doing the right things, the conviction will automatically come to me. I always say that it is not your confidence, but your conviction that takes you closer to success. Right? The difference, yeah, please.
Yeah, continue.
No, and the difference between confidence and conviction is that conviction comes from within, plus your understanding of the surrounding, while confidence is entirely about you, right? So the example that I give is that let's say that it's a tennis match and the champion is actually 5 set down in the decider game. Now that the champion knows that whatever I have been doing with the confidence of my play has got me there, needs to rethink and say, hey, listen, I need to change my strategy and I need to play my opponent more than I need to play my strength. I need to play what I can do to basically beat this opponent. Whatever I was trying so far hasn't worked. And you will see that there are basically champions who turn the games around from that kind, right? So it's a question of conviction. And I feel that the conviction comes when you have that feeling, hey, listen, I have what it takes and I can convince people around me to be with me and walk the journey with me. So everything is aligning with me rather than trying to say, hey, that didn't work and therefore I failed.
Great. So, I mean, we have talked about success and we have talked about failure. We talked about getting awakeness or becoming awake, consciousness, as you may say. And that's the time when you start getting and tasting success. So that brings me to a very, a different sort of a question. How does one define success and how does one define failure?
Well, I can give you a very
In your perspective. Okay.
No, certainly I can give you a very academic answer, or I can give you a slightly more practical answer. You know, I take one step back and I would say that, first thing is that failure is a guarantee, in the sense that if you do something and you have failed and you continue doing the same thing, you are going to fail again and again. It's guaranteed.
The only time you will not fail is if you don't try to do anything. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing with success is that if you do something and you succeed, it is not a guarantee that if you do the same thing again, you will succeed again. Right?
Okay.
The world could have possibly moved on. There could be something else that could have happened. So success are chances, right? So in my mind, failure is actually what you should be more happy with, more content with. Of course, you need to be sure that you meet some successes, especially if it involves money or if it involves resources, because you're going to run out of resources very soon if you don't achieve the end goal. So there is one way of looking at it: is success is if you have achieved your goal that you had set, and failure is if you haven't achieved that goal. But the point is that it's not a 0-1. There is a continuum of points when you talk about. So you could achieve 50% of your goal, you could achieve 60% of your goal, whatever that might be the number. So then it becomes a question of saying that at what level will I say I have succeeded? So the question comes very clearly that I feel that I have succeeded when I think that this particular experience has given me something new to learn, which is relevant, valuable, and taken me from point A to point B, where point B is certainly at a level that I feel happier, contented, convinced about my future.
Brilliant. So now, guys, we have a working definition, I would say, of success. And if you work by that definition, working definition, I can guarantee you one thing: you will never fail.
That's true. I mean, they say that you don't fail, you just give up.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you give up, of course, you don't try and you fail anyway, nonetheless. Now, I think I should be calling you doctor because you did your PhD. So I should be actually addressing you as Dr. Mishra. So you actually started off to be an educationist.
Yeah.
And you tried that and you taught, you were a faculty at IIM. Now, what do you think is right with the education system in India today? And more importantly, what do you think is broken? I'm not saying wrong, broken with the education system in India. So let's go with what are the things that the Indian education system nailed it, got it right. And then we'll talk about what's broken about it.
So I think one of the most powerful and working part of our education system is the continuing reinforcement of the fact that there is no escaping hard work. So our education system makes this very clear that you need to work hard to really achieve any level of proficiency or any outcomes in your education system. So that is certainly one particular thing in there. Second, possibly the good thing about our education system is that it has, especially if you go to some of the so-called, A-grade institutions, it has attracted some very passionate people, and you will always find these in every institute. Means I have had the benefit of going to some of these kind of colleges, and I always find some very passionate person who is there just for the joy and the love of learning, and finding those people, associating with them is such a huge of where we started, and with the resources and the understanding of the Western world which we had, to have some of the vision to build these institutions which are today really worth their weight in gold, and we are so proud of these institutions.
Some of them are world class.
Yes,
Definitely.
and these institutions and the graduates of these institutions have made their mark in every field of life. So that is certainly there. And last but not the least, I feel that we have also been very, very fortunate and very strong in terms of communicating value system into our graduates. We have really been able to kind of give the idea of a slightly socialist, a slightly balanced view of the world, and make people aware that this is a privilege that you have. And therefore, when you go to any of the valedictory sessions or the commencement sessions of these universities, you will see the vice chancellors or the directors or the principals talking about this, that you are stepping in to be responsible, not just for yourself, but for the future. So, these are some of the things that I feel. Means the list is obviously much bigger in the sense, but I think I would put my most of the weight to these points.
That's great. So we have a very strong fundamental. The fundamentals are strong. The foundation is good. And we are on the right track. We have been on the right track for quite some time. We're getting ahead there. But there are some things that are broken. Some bridges are not there, were there, broke. So what are those things that are broken?
See, one of the key things that I have been working for much of my life, means I have spent almost about 2.5 decades, means I wouldn't say as an educationist, but certainly a student of learning. And, one of my favorite topic to talk about is the art of learning. Means one of the key things that is missing, not just from Indian education, but from global education, is that, we in this generation or in this era, we say that the only thing that will basically sustain or will not become irrelevant among your skills is your ability to learn. If you have learned to learn, it will never be irrelevant. Everything else will basically be disrupted, will be changed. It's like if I am into an engineering college, and the engineering college has this way of saying that I will confiscate your mobile phone if you use it in your college, right? Let's say that it's a post-graduation college, and after you graduate or on the day of your graduation, we will return you your phone. The chances are that that phone is going to be so irrelevant for you, right, that even if you get it back, you will be like, hey, listen, I don't want it, right? So if a phone which is worth, say, a 10,000 or a 20,000 becomes so irrelevant, then how can the course that was designed decades ago will stay relevant, right? But then this is not the challenge of the educational colleges, because it is a fact that you need to build on the familiarity that I talked about earlier as well. So you need to understand that you go to a college not to basically get your final, masterpiece of the book that you are supposed to write in your life, but the language, the grammar, the style, the structure of writing it. So that is one of the things which is broken, that we don't communicate to people what this college is actually giving you, what this education system is giving you. People, for instance, blame the idea of rote learning, to say rote learning is the big culprit. But believe me, without rote learning, you can't learn. there is a need for you to be programmed in a certain way. There is a need for the bias at least to be put in your system before the system starts recognizing anything else, more complicated softwares and programs that can be installed, right? So, and there is only a rote learning, and that bias, nobody writes that bias from the beginning. It is just copied from one to other.
Right?
Right.
So you have the famous copy and paste.
Yeah.
That is
right.
the most used practice around the world.
Right. But if I were to really say that, one thing that I would like the education system to change, or education system to look at more closely, then that is what I call as the learning assurance model. In a manufacturing setup, if I have got the complete assurance of the quality of my input,
Okay.
Be it electricity or the skills of the people, or the resources in terms of tools, or the metal or the wood that I am working with, then I am assured that, hey, listen, my output is going to be of a certain quality. And therefore, I would say I am giving you quality guarantee on this. But in today's education system, and especially when we are talking about entrance exam, this is almost like the check that my raw material is of great quality, right?
Yeah.
I am getting possibly the cream if I go to the topmost of the colleges and say they will basically get the cream of the society to work with. And if
Right.
you
So I'm getting grade 1 coal. Okay.
right.
Now what
Yeah, right. So I am getting the cream. And if you have basically dabbled with cooking, you know that you do anything to the cream, it will taste good. You add sugar to it, it tastes nice. You add salt to it, tastes nice. If you add, lemon to it, it tastes nice. So you can do little wrong with the cream as such, right? So I think that we have the challenge of that when we see that a graduate has succeeded, the educational institute stands up and says, see, I have made you succeed. And when a graduate fails, then the education system, the same system, looks at them and says, you idiot. When it should be other way around. The failure of the graduate should be an institution's, and the success should be entirely the individual's. Right? So to me, that is the biggest challenge, or that is where the system is broken in terms of, I know that the efforts are required, etc., etc. But hey, listen, why is a youth spending so much time on TikTok or watching the videos or watching other stuff? So they basically are using their time to do something. If they are not doing what you are expecting them to do, it means that you are not being able to compete, right? So the competitive exam that you want them to pass should apply to you as well.
I think that's a great note. And on that note, I think Samant has been reading all the comments that has been posted by the audience. And he's from the smile on his face, I know that he's got some questions from there as well. So Samant, take it away.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Sen. Firstly, I guess this is a kind of a controversial question, but at the risk of, I'll just go ahead with this. Anita ji asks, welcome, sir. What's your thought on ending competitive examinations in India?
It's actually a visionary statement. I don't think it is controversial. It is a visionary statement, because in the future, what is going to happen is that whether you accept it or not, but your overall performance in schools, in colleges, in general life is going to be so well documented that the proof of your capability, demonstration of your capability, applications that you have developed, and all of that is going to be available to a college without having to take this kind of a approach of testing a person. See, the point is that, like an interview, even an entrance exam is flawed because I am only getting 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour to basically prove what I know in general, which is not really a very fair way of looking at it, right? So I should have a longitudinal way of understanding, hey, listen, what have I done? For instance, when I went to write my CAT exam, and luckily it didn't affect my result, my paper, my center was changed, because that was the year then that Babri Masjid had happened, and I had to change my center. So when I went to the center, they said, no, we don't have your paper here. And I lost almost about 15, 17 minutes till they could figure it out. Now, it was such a disaster for me because I prepared for so long and I was working and I took break to do all of this. It would have been a disaster. So I think that we will see the movement from these entrance exam into a more structured assessment and gives you a feedback on an ongoing basis as well, that hey, listen, you are doing this, you are good for this, you need to do this, you will basically get to this particular path from here, right? I think in the future the relevance of the school itself is a big question mark. So I don't think that taking the task or ask that should the entrance exam be ended is actually a very wrong question to ask, because means very simply put, a computer without any input will learn what we learn in 15 years in schools in possibly maximum 15 days.
Right. Thank you so much, Randeep, sir. And I guess the final question, this isn't exactly about competitive exams, but then this is a question that I've been, let's say this is a very personal topic for me.
Certainly.
And I've been struggling. I haven't spoken this with anyone, by the way. So there's the first time I'm opening with this topic.
I'm glad.
And,
That's very courageous. Okay. Go ahead.
and this isn't about competitive exam, but this was my final year, B.Ed degree exam. So there was a particular topic. There was a topic called Drama and Art in Education. That was the name of the entire subject. And of course, I don't want to take the teacher's name, but then the topic was so beautiful. The topic was so beautiful that the questions asked in the exam and the topic, it not exactly taught to us, but what's there in the syllabus. The topics were so beautiful, they were so abstract, and they were important and relevant for us, not as teachers or students, but as people. And the questions were so abstract and beautiful, I gave my answers in such a way. And usually for me, exams are like, bhai, exam ke pehle 2 ghante padhai karo, kafi hai. Get that passing marks and get it done with. That was my attitude, because exams for me was not the point of studying or attending a college. It was attending the classes and learning the skills. Exam was like, I just treated it as a small obstacle on my way to achieving that skill. But that particular exam, I remember, I gave it my best, the best paper that I gave in my entire life. The handwriting from beginning to finish, and the nature of the answers, and the beauty of each answer, I gave it perfectly. It was my 100%. But then, in between the exam, something that hit me was, okay, the topic is so abstract and beautiful, but is my teacher, who would be correcting that paper, because I've known him or her for 4 or 5 years, I don't think he has abstract understanding or experience to look at my answers in a way that I want it to be looked at. And in between the exam, I almost fell into an existential crisis, a small existential crisis. Like, okay, what's the point of giving the exam? If the teacher isn't even going to understand my answer, then why am I even giving the exam? I might just leave and figure it out afterwards. So that is one thing that I dealt with. Like, that is the problem that I was having at the time. So what is your take on this? Where a student, why does a student, at the time I was a student, why should I have to go through this existential crisis? I want answers from everyone, by the way. Firstly, Randeep sir, and then Mr. Sen and Aditya. In a sequence,
I'll go last.
please.
I'll go last.
No, I want Aditya to go last. So, what is your take on this from my experience? Like, why should I, as a student, have to go through this mental trauma? Could be not exactly a huge deal for others, but why should I have to go through this? Because the teacher may not understand every perspective of mine.
So I will possibly take the easiest route, that is to answer it first, or take that question first. I think that learning is always a very, very uncomfortable and a disconcerting experience, because I have been actually pursuing the idea of understanding how do you define learning. What is the closest metaphor that you can actually associate with learning? And I have seen a lot of I have asked this question to a lot of people, including vice chancellors of universities in sessions or in individual discussions, scientists, and all those kind of people. And they give me a lot of means to learning rather than the metaphor of learning. But finally, there is a neuroscientist, which is Mikhail Merzenich. He is from California. And he gave a very, very nice answer, which is that to learn is to change, right? So for you to basically say that I have learned something, and that is my addition to what he said, three things should have happened. That is, one, you should know what is changing, right? Second, why should it change? As in, why was what you had held before is different or is of lower value to you than what you are picking next? And third is, how is it going to impact your future, right? So what happened in that particular exam is actually what should have happened in every exam that was designed in that particular manner. And that is to awaken your own self, because when you reflect, you basically should come to these kind of existential questions. Unless somebody takes you to that level, so you should thank that faculty rather than feeling unhappy about that. Hey, listen, you have means I charge money when I do these kind of coaching, and where I basically try to awaken that the chi, which they call in the Zen, in people, right? So that is what happened with you in that kind of a moment. So I think it was an exceptional experience, and you should certainly share it with more people, into saying, because you got so passionately involved with that topic and let your brain look inside and understand, right? And this is what has been the change. For instance, if you compare the curriculum of ICSE, CBSE, and so on and so forth with an IB, it is designed for this. They basically make it convenient for the learners to reflect, to look inside, to make association, to make connections. Because as I started by saying, the answers lies within you. The answers lies in you to convince yourself that this is good enough for me to commit my rest of the life to it. Rather than somebody pointing you in that, if you, go 2 kilometers and take a left, you will find the point that you wanted to reach. Life isn't that way, right? So I think it was such a exceptional question to ask in the end, and I think that is what all of us are chasing.
And that is one thing I take myself, because of course what you said was a new perspective. I mean, everything is a new perspective since I haven't shared with anyone. But besides that is something that I aspire to practice in my profession as a teacher. Is that if there is a student that is coming to me and they feel like no teacher is able to understand me, I should be that person, or at least I should make that effort to at least attempt to understand, not understand, but attempt to understand where they're coming from.
So Samant, just a very quick note. I want to give time to, Mr. Sen and Bose to add their thoughts on this as well. But, one of the things that I do in the sessions is that I go into a class and I say, hey, listen, please don't look at me as the gold standard in this topic, because I don't want you to be disappointed to see, hey, listen, the best I can achieve is become Randir. Because I certainly am not the gold standard in this, right? But I am here because I can help you think, and I can help you progress or make your own path of learning in this particular topic, right? So that is the most critical part that a faculty actually brings to the process. That can I basically make you think, can I facilitate the process of learning? Because learning is very personal. Nobody can ever learn for you, right? So please, let me input as well.
So Samant, your question was very simple. That you're answering, and what if the teacher didn't understand what you're writing, right? Can I answer this by telling a story?
Who's going to stop you?
Samant has not said anything.
I mean, the video broke off in between. I think it's a connection issue. But if I could get, you wanted to say a story, answer it with the story.
Yeah.
I think Randir said it. I should be the one to stop them, since it is my question. I'm not going to stop you. It's my benefit, so I won't stop you.
Right. So there was a young boy like you, a bit younger, who was in class, and the teacher came around and told the whole class, guys, you need to write a paragraph as to what you want to be when you grow up. Standard question. Aditya is very much familiar with such questions in life. So everybody wrote, I want to be an engineer, I want to be this, I want to do this, I want to invent blah, I want to invent blah, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a heart surgeon, whatever. So she read all of them and she was very happy. And then she came to one sheet of paper. And it was very simply written, when I grow up, I want to be happy. So she was very upset with that answer. And she told the boy, you didn't answer the question. You did not understand the question. Similar to you, Samant. The boy replied to the teacher, you don't understand life. The name of the boy is the late John Lennon, who went on to make history, who touched more than 1 billion lives across the world, and was also inducted into many Hall of Fames and so on and so forth. So, Samant, the answer to your question is, sometimes the teachers don't understand life. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I'm not worrying. As I said, I just take it as an inspiration for something I shouldn't be.
Aditya, all yours.
Oh, do I have to add something after this? Great. No pressure at all. But I think it's a very good question by Samant and great answers. I don't know how well I can follow it up, but I'll just add to it. So perspectives can be different, as Mr. Sen's story showed. And if it's a subjective answer, then obviously the different perspectives will come into play. And as again Mr. Sen said, there are some places where people won't understand your perspective because they aren't sitting in front of you, or even in an interview, if you're giving them an answer, probably at that heat of the moment, they won't understand which perspective you're coming from. And there is a bias. There's obviously a bias. If there is subjective answer, a human judgment, there always will be a bias. And this bias also sometimes helps in choosing the right people for the right college or for the right organization also. And sometimes it falters also. So it's a very complex thing, but I personally believe in still giving my best. So I don't really expect whenever I'm giving an exam or attempting an interview for the other person to understand me completely. I just judge it as my selection of the particular organization or the college or the school also. So let's say if I am to interview for an organization, if I give an answer, the person in front of me does not understand my perspective, probably we wouldn't be compatible in the future also. Or probably the person does not want a student like me. So sometimes it's not just a question on my ability, it's also a question on my compatibility with that particular organization or the kind of students they want to take in. And that's what I believe in. So I personally just believe in giving my best in every examination or every interview that I'm a part of and explain my perspective with the utmost honesty possible and then leave it up to them. That, if they don't select me, then I take it very sportingly also. I don't really crib and cry over it because I've done that a lot during my childhood. So now I have left that a lot. So yeah, that's my answer. I don't know how well I did a job at answering this, but yeah, that's what I do.
I guess this is not exactly about answering my internal trauma about this suffering, not exactly that, but it's just me trying to open up and find perspectives that are other than my own.
And that's very brave of you to accept these perspectives.
I'll have to do some more introspection and find peace with this particular thing. But again, firstly, for this specific answer, thank you to all three of you. That's me personally, not the host of this podcast or Pro Bono's employee. There's Samant thanking three of you.
Thank you so much, Samant.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Samant.
You
made the evening.
As I do every day, I'll take that as credit. But of course, I have to go back to Randhir sir. Randhir sir, before we end officially the podcast, any final word for any student who is preparing for future competitive exams or any student in general that is preparing for anything challenging in their life?
Certainly, means I think one of the key thing that is important for all of us to realize that any of these is your own personal journey, and so please step back, understand what this journey is all about, and make sure that you don't look at it as a 0-1, but make it look at something which is a combination of various possibilities. And the most important thing for the target audience that you have is that you have the whole life ahead of you. Today is the first day of that rest of the life, first moment of that rest of the life. So please don't carry any of the huge baggages from the past. Please see that you have unlimited time, unlimited resources, unlimited counsels, people available to help you. Reach out to them and make the best of your life. And please remember to give back, to contribute back, to feel happy and contented, like Mr. Sen said, in what you are doing. Because at the end, what I feel is most important is that when you go to the bed in the night, you feel that it was a day well spent. So that doesn't change whether you are preparing for an entrance exam, or you are preparing for the war, or you are just preparing to serve the next langar in a gurudwara. That feeling should not change. So that is what I would like to say.
Nothing to add. Of course, I'm going to leave it as it is. But I do want to end on a quote by Randhir sir. As he says, the only time you fail is if you don't try it. With that being said, first of all, to all the audience members, thank you for your questions, comments, and insights. Thank you for watching. Aditya and Mr. Sen, thank you for joining, and Vinayak for streaming. And of course, most importantly, Randhir sir, thank you so much for speaking with us. It was a wonderful conversation. I absolutely loved every second of it. So thank you.
Same here. Same here. Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity, and wishing all of you the best, and please stay safe. Bye-bye.
Right. Now, Randhir sir said stay safe. So I'll continue from that. Stay home, stay safe, wash your hands, and like and follow our Facebook page and turn on post notifications to get notified when we go live. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch our videos about entrepreneurship. And we'll see you tomorrow at the same time at 6 p.m. with another guest. Take care now. Bye-bye. See you.